haven't talked about cannabis in a number of months, and it's funny because I've been so busy with these tours that are coming up and these other programs. Earth Ancients and, of course, Destiny are my children, and I love Destiny simply because I can talk about the personal growth, spirituality, and wellness side of the ancient past. And today I'm going to bring back information, and I want to talk a little bit with my guest today on cannabis. Now, if you remember, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Cannabis and Sexual Ecstasy for Men. Funny title, because I really wanted it for men and women, but the publisher said, well, Cliff, it's a, much more focused towards men. And I said, okay. Little did I know that wasn't the greatest title, but anyhow, the information in that book is a lot of fun, was fun for me to generate. And today I want to talk not only about cannabis, but also the spiritual aspects of using plant allies or plant medicine. And I have with me today a returning guest, Marguerite Rigoloso, and she wrote a book. We had her a couple of years ago to talk about a divine conception, which was an interesting topic, but she has been working with cannabis now for a while, and we're going to hear about her interactions with it and how she teaches with it. And Marguerite, it's always wonderful to have you on Destiny. Great to see you.
Thank you so much, Cliff, for having me again. Wonderful to be here. All
right. I want to jump in real quickly. The Sacred Cannabis Oracle means that you're sensitive, you're psychic, or you're intuitive, or you came into this body as a very open individual. So you can tap into what we would call the higher realms, the other dimensions, whatever you want to call it. What is the Sacred Cannabis Oracle? Talk a little bit about that.
So this is someone who works with the plant spirit of Lady Cannabis. We might call her Asterion, is an ancient term for it, because it connects us with the stars, to enhance our intuitive capacities and our capacities to receive direct level information from Source, Divine Sophia, other intelligences in the other dimensions. And so I never knew that cannabis could be used in that way until I started working with it back in, 2005. And I started, as I began working with this plant, only in ceremonial contexts, pretty much by myself, I would start getting downpours of very high level information that I knew were not just coming from my mind. And I would almost not even know what I was saying. I would kind of almost get into babbling. And I recorded every single one of these sessions that I've ever done. And at some point, I realized, wow, I think I am channeling here. And I like to call it serving as the oracle. I use the older, more respected term from ancient Greece and the ancient Western world. Mm-hmm. So I have been using cannabis in an oracle state, or to induce an oracle state, on and off since 2005 or so, and with a hiatus that we could talk about. And it is only now that it is becoming legal in more and more states and more countries and so forth that I am feeling the courage and the call to work with it with others and to help others cultivate their own open oracle state, enhanced by, in cooperation with this plant spirit.
Okay, so as an oracle, is this in a classroom setting? Is this individual therapeutic sessions that you're presenting this energy in? And give us a sense of the plant medicine of cannabis, because it has an intelligence of its own. This is what the beauty of cannabis. It has an innate intelligence that's very old.
Yes.
And if you can be quiet enough, as you're altered,
Yes.
you can really gain some fascinating information for a variety of purposes that we'll talk about today. But give us a little bit of background on, and perhaps a case study of working with somebody and this, as you call it, Lady Cannabis. I like that, Lady Cannabis.
Yeah. They call a lot of the medicines, ayahuasca and some of these others, lady. And a colleague of mine, Connie Viveros, who's been in and around cannabis for quite a while, said that it came to her that this plant wanted to be called Lady Cannabis when you refer to the cannabis name, because there are many other names, as we know. Yeah. One is Santa Maria. And then I can tell you what I received as an oracle using cannabis about her name. And as I mentioned back in the ancient world, I believe it was called Asterion. Okay. Aster, the stars, the starry realm connection. So, how I have worked with it with others is, I'm not like in PS 72 talking up at the top of the classroom with this. No, it's actually been very private, because, for years and years and years, it was not legal to have it, possess it, use it, and so forth. And I just felt the long arm of the Inquisition.
I like that.
Yeah, still coming into my space around it. So I had to be very quiet about it, even though I was a public spiritual teacher starting before, 2012, when I created my Seven Sisters Mystery School. And so the way I have used it for myself personally is one thing, which I'll mention. And then how I've worked with it with others is another. And then how I'm going to be working with it with others is a third thing. Okay. How I work with it myself, I have never, ever used it recreationally, meaning I don't just light up at the end of the day to kick my feet up, or on the weekend, or with friends, or whatever. No, I have always created an altar. I make a special time when I'm doing this. It's usually been at night. I set up an elaborate altar with offerings, prayers, incense, music that stimulates the opening, trance-inducing music. Mm-hmm. And then I go into, I smoke with a pipe. And then I go into the state. I ask for permission to enter the realms, the halls of Amenti, as I call it. And then I begin, as it comes into opening me, I begin to receive information. Often there's news for me, spiritual, psychic news. And then I usually have an intention and a list of questions of what I want to look at. And we just go on a journey, and I record it. And
I was going to say, great that you record it.
And sometimes this has informed my teaching information of classes that I do, books that I have written. It has informed some of that, some very high level, wild, out there esoteric stuff. And, it has just basically informed my whole body and mind, spirit. When I started working with cannabis, I would shake and I would hiss, which made me understand that the Delphic Oracle probably had used cannabis as one of her methods of opening. Mm-hmm. And she was called like either the serpent or the dragon, the Drakaina. And I would start hissing, and I understood, oh my God, I am embodying this energy of the serpent dragon, into myself. And then as I began to integrate the vibration and the frequency more and more into my body, mind, spirit, that doesn't happen anymore. But so that's how I've worked with cannabis for myself. When I have been working with others, as of thus far, it's been as a sitter. So someone comes to my place, or it will become online as well. And we set the sacred space, we invoke protection. That's always a big thing for me as well. And then I let the person start imbibing. I sit there as a sitter. They have their intention, their questions. We go through it, and I am a sounding board. I am a witness. I am a deepener for what they're doing, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, either for themselves or to receive information, oracle information in service to their families, communities, and our world, our galaxy. Okay. And then in future, how I'm going to be working is one-on-one, probably primarily online. But we'll talk about this more at the end. We have now the Seven Sisters Sacred Feminine Plant Medicine Academy, which is going to be end of May through end of July, 2023. And we're going to be, cannabis is one of the modules. We're going to be having an online ceremony. That will be the first time that I've done a ceremony with others. Okay. And I've also started doing an online monthly YouTube show called Co-Creating the New Earth. And every other month, I go into cannabis state, which is what has even inspired us to, it is what has been a springboard for me to open back into cannabis again and start communicating about it, serving in this way, and having conversations such as this.
You were using it back in, I think you said 2005. I was reintroduced to it in 2016, so you're a little ahead of me. But there's a lot of things, and I want you to comment on this a little bit. When I was in college, the cannabis was of such a low grade that we just didn't have the same type of conscious shift when we're using the cannabis today. And I think the issue that a lot of people have is that they start using cannabis and they don't have guidance. And this is the big problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I try to give some guidance in my cannabis book. But I think that with any drug, with any plant medicine, I should say, you need to be really aware of what you're doing with it. The intention is critical at the very beginning. And I just want those listening to understand that if you haven't used cannabis and you're thinking about it, in a few minutes here, we're going to talk about ways to begin not only finding cannabis, because it's becoming more and more available. I think a third of the United States now is legal, and more states are making it recreationally legal. So you can experiment with it. And I will say this, and Marguerite mentioned this in the very beginning. Cannabis is the most loving consciousness that you can work with in exploring not only your own awareness, but you can use it for healing. I mean, my whole book's on sexuality. You can use it for insight, as Marguerite mentioned. And in the very beginning, you may want to find a group. And I think the Seven Sisters Mystery School might be someplace you could check out. And Marguerite, I don't know if you recommend and work with people who are introducing themselves to cannabis. You do?
Yes, I will be doing that pretty much on the heels of this Sacred Plant Medicine Academy inauguration.
Okay.
It's because I feel it is very critical for people.
Exactly. And I want to just mention this. Here in the Bay Area, we tend to be a little ahead of the curve, but I've discovered that there are meetup groups in pretty much all the major cities around the United States that have cannabis groups. And this is something you can consider. You go and you introduce yourself, and there's usually somebody there who will talk about cannabis and, perhaps the different strains and what they're good for. And then there's an introduction. And this is the big suggestion I have for those of you who are not familiar with cannabis. Have somebody guide you through your first few experiences, because it is not ayahuasca or LSD or DMT where you are losing control of your ability to comprehend and function. Right. Cannabis is a very light psychedelic. It's something that you set an intention, and the beauty behind it. And I want to hear from you, Marguerite, on this, is that by setting an intention, you are setting a program to allow this plant medicine to work with you in a way that you want. And that can be, hello, I would like to experience this alteration. I want to feel this. I want to see what it's all about. Please guide me. You can say it's kind of almost like a prayer. Please guide me as I experience this. And I'd like to have a good experience because we don't want to have a bad experience. But what would you say in terms of introduction? What is your feeling, Marguerite, on that?
I completely agree with you, Cliff. And I'm so glad to hear you saying it, because I have not been totally tuned into the cannabis world and the public cannabis world. But I sometimes, as usual, feel like I'm a lone voice, when it comes to rigor, integrity, working appropriately with plants and so forth. There's just so much use and misuse and profligate wasting of the experience, and then getting into trouble. You can get into paranoia. You can get into addictions. Right. Let's be real. Okay. Yeah. Cannabis can have addiction entities hooked right into it. Okay. Yeah. It's really about a combination of things, intention, as well as your karma with the plant. Okay. Because now clearly you have a good karma with this plant. Whatever past life experiences you've had are coming to bear here. People have all different types of things. And what I have been in Oracle state receiving from cannabis directly is that is a direct response of what you've done with, for, and of cannabis in past lives. And if you've got paranoia, it's because there's a misuse function that you want to clear up. Mm-hmm. If you get into addictions, it's because there's something you needed to clear up, right? So if you get physical pain with it, sometimes the same thing. So this is critical. And I highly do recommend people who start out, seek a mentor, even a wise friend who can be a sober sitter for you, guiding you, asking you questions, helping you stay with one foot in 3 dimensions as you kite yourself up, into the upper dimensions. And even better if you have a wise guide, a teacher, an elder, who knows these halls of a mentee and so forth and so on. Because while you, Cliff, have had, these beautiful experiences, and it's a gentle teacher for you, and you've used it for sexual assistance and pleasure and things like that. Other people have different things. Like for me, it was like a safe entry point to the underworld. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, for seriously more than 10 years, that is right where I would go with this medicine, or any medicine. Talk
about that, Marguerite. Really? When you say underworld, were you, is this for research, writing, or were you looking at your shadow?
Number one, I was looking at my shadow, and I was looking at my karma. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I couldn't even use anything stronger. I would never even dream of ayahuasca, and even mushrooms were too much for me. Okay. I talk about the underworld. It was like the bottom rung of the underworld I would go. So cannabis was like a little bit more of where I was a little more in the driver's seat with it. Mm-hmm. But man, clearly my soul wanted to know a lot about the difficult dimensions, and whether we want to call them hell realms or whether we want to call them just the challenging aspects of realities and the dimensions. For some reason, I was always going there for my first round of cannabis before the break during the big C that happened, where 2 years I was guided to not use it at all. Yeah. So, and now I'm in it with a whole other energy. I'm not going directly to the ground floor of the underworld anymore,
That's pretty hairy.
I'm telling you, though, there's nothing like the underworld for getting wisdom teachings, right? Like, you get pretty gosh darn intense information about the universe and the world, the way it works, what's really going on, as well as, your own shadow, your own karma, your own transgressions, what you've done, how you need to heal that, right? So this is no joke, this medicine, for playing around in it. It's just no joke.
Right. So let's start. So those of you listening who are interested in exploring plant medicine, hopefully you're in a state where cannabis is legal. You can go to a dispensary, you do a little research, and you discover that I would like to explore my creativity. If you don't know what strain you're interested in, you go to the bud tender. Remember, I don't suggest bud tenders as a great reference because they're looking at a lot of different people and they may not know specifically the best strain. So I really suggest that you go online and you find the strains that are good for what you're trying to achieve, which is, in this case, creativity. You go to the bud tender at the dispensary and they suggest a plant medicine. You bring it home. Hopefully you can do either a group setting where you're exploring with others, or you have a friend and, don't feel uncomfortable. Say, look, I haven't used this before. I'd love you to be there with me. It could be a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, somebody who is somewhat experienced, who can just watch you and be with you so that you have somebody who is somewhat knowledgeable in plant medicines or cannabis. So you inhale it, you take it in, remembering that your intention is your software. In other words, your intention is going to lead your higher wisdom to say, okay, plant medicine, spiritual ally, this is what I want to achieve in this first setting. And as you become altered, and it's very, very light, my friends. Listen to me. It's not like we've had Graham Hancock on here. We've had people who are loving ayahuasca. Ayahuasca overwhelms, takes over. You have to actually release into it in many cases. Yeah. Cannabis is a very gentle altered state of consciousness, and I'm laughing because it's really wonderful. When you ask for permission, when you ask for, you have set an intention and you have a nice setting, it's relaxed, you have a friend there, or you're in a group and you have this cannabis that you have chosen for a specific person. Now, this is what's so great about cannabis now, compared to 20 years ago. They have designer cannabis. Marguerite, you're in Massachusetts. There must be dispensaries everywhere that you can go.
Oh my God. I have one like a block away. Okay. Literally. They're all peppered everywhere.
I'm curious, the bud tenders, are they somewhat knowledgeable when you go in?
Yeah. I mean, I say, well, I would like to go into a deeper altered state experience. And they're like, okay, sativa. And then use this one. And one was called like spaceship something.
Oh, the names are out of control.
Like, all right, that's the one that Marguerite wants. The alien ship one. Yes, give her that. So
yeah.
They generally know how to guide you. And then, you can experiment around with it in your dispensary, like try this one, try that one, and notice yourself, become your researcher. Is there a difference? What is it?
Exactly. Now, one of the things I want to mention real quickly is that there is a great deal of abuse when it comes to cannabis. And when I say abuse, I have a lot of people who have emailed me and say, hey, man, I use it every single day for my post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
Or I use it for my pain. I have bone pain. We're not talking about degenerative disease. We're not talking about cancer or MS or something like that. I'm talking about general issues.
Right.
And this has become a problem because the cannabis was never meant to be used as a every single day kind of a patch or remedy.
I totally agree with you. And that is, believe it or not, apparently a controversial statement.
It is because people feel it's natural. I should be able to use it.
Right.
But our ancestors didn't use it in that manner. The native indigenous people who use it today,
No.
once a week, once every 2 weeks, a couple times a month,
Yes.
as a ceremonial tool.
That's right.
And
I do every 4 to 8 weeks. And the minute I started transgressing on that and making it a shorter time, it was during the time of the Big C. I had a bad experience on it. That there were a lot of factors that were contributing to that, including that it was from someone, I mean, clearly, who knows what was going on with that, but it kicked my ass. And it was like, no, 2-year hiatus, and the 2-year hiatus thing was, it is not safe for you during this time of the Big C to go onto the astral plane. There's too much going on up there. There's warfare and you don't want to be in it. But it happened to correspond with a time where I was starting to get a little too cushy and go, let me go in 2 weeks now because I want a little bit more information. So if cannabis kicks your ass, you're lucky because you're not going to get into an addiction pattern with it. Okay. Because here's my understanding of addiction. Addiction is when entities that are separate from the plant hook right into your auric field when you are using the plant. And this is smoothed out and opened up the more and more and more you use the plant. Those openings become more hookable. Mm-hmm. And the entities, addiction entities and other types of programs will come right in, hook you, and then take control over your use of cannabis or anything else that's addictive. And suddenly it's not about you and your relationship with the plant and everything. It's about you, the plant, and these entities in a triangle. And usually they're running the show because the food that they get is your lack of integrity energy, is your feeling out of control energy, is your suddenly you realize you can't do without it in a day. Mm-hmm. And now there's an energy there for you. These entities feed off that, so they like to encourage this, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what is going on along with the legalization. These entities are out in full force. And it's even, I would say, what I've channeled is that it's part of, so they knew they couldn't hold their finger in the dike to keep it illegal and keep people from getting their information forever. Right?
Yeah.
So now these great beings that are negative are doing the other tack. They're like, great, make it legal and usable for everyone. And we're going to get in that way. We're going to mess it up and mess up people's oracle abilities by turning it into addiction and stonerism. Okay. Yeah. That's what we have to watch out for. And when I first got back into public cannabis use in December 2022, I did my first public oracle on my YouTube channel live. It was about Lady Cannabis, and she had all this information. And she's like, look, you got to understand that this whole legalization throughout the world is bringing in a whole other hijack.
Yeah.
And you got to be discerning about what that hijack is so that you can still continue to work in harmony with this plant and not be taken over in another direction, which is just as bad as having it suppressed.
Exactly. This is really why these groups like yours are really, really critical. I was looking at a Los Angeles group on cannabis where I think it was an introduction to cannabis, and it was meeting your higher self, which I thought was a really great theme.
Let's see.
Yeah. And
let's see.
Yeah. And so there you are. You're guided by a facilitator. I even think they suggested the strain to use, and they were doing these introductions to consciousness expansion with very short, hits. You do take a quick inhalation and with a very low strain. That's the other thing I want to remind people. When you start using cannabis, your percentage of THC needs to be low. It needs to be in this low teens, 12 to 15% THC, which is the psychoactive property. So as you inhale, your body is altered, but it's not a severe alter. It's not like you're going to go spinning off into space. You're going to be in control. And by the way, you're always in control with cannabis. Even if you smoke a very potent strain, there are techniques that you can use to get out and feel a lot better. You can stand, you can eat something, you can drink a lot of fluids, which is wonderful.
Take a shower.
Yeah, that's another one. Take a shower. But so these groups, look for these groups if you're wanting to be introduced to cannabis, and I really urge you to consider using it. And why do we want to use cannabis? Okay, tapping into the higher realms. Marguerite mentioned a few things. One of the techniques that I suggest, and I think you mentioned it as well, Marguerite, is after say 2 or 3 experiences, you want to know what your higher self is about. You want to know what your soul level is about. So what you do is you set the intention. I'd like to learn about myself, and I want to have a response from my higher wisdom. And what I suggest, and what a lot of other people are suggesting, is have a series of questions written before your experience. Say, make it easy, make it 4 to 7. Not 2, 5, or 6 pages.
Not Marguerite, who had 15, 20, 25.
Oh my God.
Why she was in the underworld.
Yeah,
I swear. I mean, I would be like, oh my God, I'm going to go.
Too many. That's too much.
So I got all these questions, right? And I'd be at it for hours, which I would love. I'd plan that out. But, and you can do that. But it was like, me, I love to go high octane, but You're so right. Like if you're wanting to get introduced, ease into it. That's what we're going to do in our group ceremony is like, we're not going to be like wild out there with right. It's going to be ease into it.
Yeah.
Notice the moment when you start feeling altered, right? Like get aware of your body, mind, spirit. What thoughts start coming in?
Right.
Right. That kind of thing.
Yeah. And you mentioned recording. This is the other thing I recommend is there are free apps on your iPhone or your other phones that you can download, and they'll run right with you. You can turn it on, have your questions 4 to 6, maybe more questions. When you're really feeling good and you have this relaxed feeling, ask yourself a couple of questions. Let it sit, and then just answer them yourself. Let it come through. Open. What does this mean? What is the feeling?
Right.
Who are you, my higher self? How long have you been with me? Blah, blah, blah.
Right. And that's when you become the oracle of your own life.
Very good. Yeah. You become an oracle for yourself. And we all have this ability to do this. Even the analytical mind, in many accounts, it might even take you two experiences, if you're new to it, to have this full download come through and say, hi, I've been with you, many lifetimes. I've been with you all the time. I've been with you since you were young. If you're really, after a while, and I've heard people do this, these other lifetimes begin popping up, and
that's right.
I was this, I was that, I was this.
Oh boy, watch out.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, Marguerite.
Oh man.
Downloading some past life stuff, because that's fascinating.
I found the good, the bad, and the ugly in myself. Cannabis is the one who humbled me in this lifetime. From lifetimes of misusing my power, being a high and mighty queen, and harming other people through that process. And it showed me, I was like, oh my God, I think that I exposed a child to death in one life. I think that I was an inquisitor. I think that I would blah, da, da. And whether it is that you are dealing with personal past lives or collective, doesn't matter. You're having the experience of being Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, call me by my true names, where I'm the murderer and the one murdered, right? That is a very deep teaching that cannabis and other medicines can give you to help you get off any high horse that you're on and othering of other people, to understand it's all within yourself. As we understand that, then we can go about our healing process with others and with our world in a much more deep and mature way. And that's what we're needing in this world. We're not needing more warfare. We're needing more self-responsibility.
Right.
And understanding, hey, I was the one who was doing that one lifetime ago. Right.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Our ancestors used cannabis for oracle-like topics. Not everybody was looking at cannabis for that insight, but I think it's a great way to start, because you can ask questions about yourself. If you're having a relationship problem, what's going on with me? Why am I reacting to her, to him this way? Yeah. Lifestyles, what's going on with my parents, my friends, what's this job, real basic stuff. And then you can get into some really fun things like Marguerite was mentioning. What was I in my last lifetime? Why? I mean, big questions. And remember, if it's recorded, you don't have to write it down. It's just whatever, spit it out, spit it out.
Right.
You'll be surprised, even in your first experience, what can be downloaded to you.
It is amazing.
I use it occasionally for answering questions about blockages, writing blockages, and things like that.
Creative blocks, right? Accessing creativity in any of the arts, those types of things.
Right.
And let me add, depending on your past life experience with the plant or with oracle frequencies, you may find that you are at different airstreams. Let's say, I think I went right to the stratospheric airstream at the beginning of my cannabis use. I was not like the 101 level. It was like, holy cow, I'm thinking about, aliens and this and that and the other thing, the whole underworld domain, all past life Egypt, past life Greece. So, and I think that you can also work up to that, or what's happening for me is I'm working down from that, which is so interesting, right? Like I started out in that high level halls of Amenti. I'm going into the underworld. Show me about the negative aliens and, all this and that, the demonic. And now, after that hiatus, and I had done a lot of work with Mother Mary and the Holy Family, which, by the way, Santa Maria is a name of cannabis for a reason, and we can talk about that. Now I can be more enjoying, because I've worked through a whole bunch of karma and realizations and communications I needed to give to the world through my work. Now I can enjoy a little bit more like the love element. Okay. Calm and relax and be in that space, be working with the subtle beings known as the Fae, right? So it's like the topics now and the energies are shifting for me. And this is a lifelong journey that you can be on, right?
Depending That's a good point. Yeah.
You should. Your life, the astrology, the times, all of this.
We're going to take a short commercial break to allow our sponsors to identify themselves. And we will be right back with more on cannabis, the sacred plant ally. We'll be right back. My guest today is Marguerite Rigocoloso. She is a facilitator for those who are interested in using cannabis for spiritual activation. And she's coming to us from Massachusetts today. And we're learning more about how to use cannabis for healing, for creativity, and for spiritual enlightenment. I want you to answer. I'm going to talk for a minute about realities, and I want you to follow up on with the thought. But one of the things that we don't do enough is shift out of our day-to-day reality. And some people would think using cannabis is a crutch, but it really isn't. Our ancestors, the native indigenous people of the Americas and around the world, used it to shift out of their current consciousness and tap in and pick up knowledge, not only of what is going on with their daily life, but hear from perhaps ancestors would come through, perhaps someone who's dearly departed. Using cannabis allows you to shift into other realms, other levels of consciousness. And the sky's the limit in many ways. It's a beginning tool. It's not like using ayahuasca, DMT, or LSD where you're forced into these
catapulted
intense levels. It's a really soft way to introduce into these altered states of consciousness that are vital as a human being to use. And I think everyone should consider using them. Not everybody's going to want to. People are like, hey, I dig where I'm at. I don't need to use it. But believe me, and especially in the West with our complex society where we are bombarded by our internet, by our TikTok, by social media, by family, we lose a sense of ourself, and we lose a sense of who we are. And we're not just physical beings. We're physical, emotional, and spiritual beings. In fact, more so than that, we're this multidimensional, consciousness that you can tap into. And my suggestion is to use cannabis as a consciousness tool. It's a gentle tool. I can't tell you enough about the experience itself when you use the tools that we're talking about, the intention, the knowledge of the cannabis strain that we're using, a comfortable and safe setting, and for the first couple of times, a mentor or a group. So what do you say to that?
Totally agree with you. That will help you also to work through anything that might come up. Because sometimes, like I said, for you, it's gentle. For not everybody, it is, depending on their karma, depending on their use past lives with the plant, stuff can come up. And because also the plant is healing you. It's not like it's tormenting you. But if paranoia is coming up, what's that about? Right? If fears are coming up, what's that about? If emotions are coming up, what's that about? That's why having that mentor there who is knowledgeable and can guide you to work through your emotional healing. So then the plant becomes a method of emotional, energetic healing, things you can move through, and then you can work with the plant in newer and deeper ways over time. Yes, very, very important. And I think that there are other plant medicines that are similar in that cacao, for example. But my experience with cacao is much more earthy, where cannabis, I am in the astral plane. I'm in the upper chakras. Cacao, I'm in the heart and downward. I feel very connected with the earth. And there's information flowing, but it's more oriented toward the heart. It's more oriented toward Mother Earth. Then there's blue lotus, which is like a lighter even version of cannabis and so forth. So each of the plants has their properties and their characteristics and the types of things you'll experience. So yes, I think a really guided introductory use. And I also tell people, trust your instincts. If you are not being called to cannabis, then it is not your plant ally. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it might be your plant ally a year or 2 or 3 or 5 down the line. Fine. Yeah. It was not my plant ally for the whole until I was 40 years old or more when I started using it. Yeah. And I trusted my instincts. I agreed to use mushrooms, but prior to that, I had this sense that it was going to blow me open. And, I know ayahuasca not going to be my plant ally, at least not right now,
I'm really afraid to try that. I'm
afraid of it, and trust that good fear.
Yeah.
If you want to try a plant ally, what you want is like an excited anticipation,
Yeah.
or like, much more yes than no. Okay. That's what you want to use as your guide.
Yeah.
So and then just ask spirit, well, what is my medicine? What is my plant medicine? And also, Cliff, what I received in that very ceremony that started me again and into my public cannabis oracle work, it said that, now I just lost my train of thought. It was something about the amount of use. I know it will come back to me.
You mean the dosage?
It was dosage. Yeah, dosage is number one. But it was also there was another really important point. It'll come back to me.
Sure.
It just went out the window.
Yeah, we've given people a sense of how to begin with it, the environment to start with. But once you begin and you've gotten over the beginning, you get the feeling of the cannabis.
Yeah.
The tools, the intention, the setting, and the strain are your goals. Those are your tools to have an experience. I want you to talk a little bit about working with feminine energy, women who are perhaps wanting to connect with the feminine, and perhaps, and this is, our society is kind of screwed up right now, especially the West. It's like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be feminine and versus masculine and so forth? Talk a little bit about working with cannabis and the feminine.
Yeah, because, women need to reclaim these plants. I mean, you may be familiar with the work of like, is it Christian Roch and Brian Murarescu, The Immortality Key, and folks like this who are like, hey, the priestesses and then the witches were the ones who were in charge of all this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Who knew, because when I came into it, it was like guys smoking in a haze, getting stoned. And that was my interpretation of plant medicine.
Yeah.
Right?
Checking out.
And then going to these conferences where men largely dominate the space, dominate the dialogue, dominate the agendas, dominate the approach to these plants. And sometimes in that, there's abuse energies that go on. And what you need is that feminine. There was a group in the Bay Area a number of years ago by this woman, Annie Oak. And I'm not sure if she's still doing this conference. I don't know if it was like a woman plant medicine conference or something like that. Mm-hmm. That was so great because she was trying to reclaim this for women, mm-hmm. and not as like the sidekick to Terrence McKenna or the girlfriend of whoever, right? But more, no, the women reclaiming the medicines, reclaiming the history, reclaiming the potions, because part of these medicines getting cut off from women and the feminine was part of this negative interdimensional agenda.
That's a really good point. And this is, you're picking up on previous times when women were objectified, but not only that, they were punished for.
She had to be doing plant. She was a plant medicine woman. She went out into the fields, this and that. And then all of a sudden she's like having these visions and drawing these things. And it's like, how do you think she came up with that? I know what I wanted to say earlier is that the plant is the teacher to help humans remember how we used to be all the time, which is open to divine source creator in eras such as Lemuria, that we might call it, pre-fall eras of humanity on the earth. This is how we used to be. This is why people get addicted, because they want to be in that 24/7.
That's a good point. Yeah.
We want this return to us. We want this state of intimate connection with the cosmos returned to us. We want to walk around with it. But the thing is, our job now is to integrate 5D and higher into 3D. We cannot just be lying down in the opium den all day long. We are meant to integrate this. And how is this going to happen? Well, basically what she told me is that the plant is just the teacher for teaching you the vibration that she wants you to then replicate on your own.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
Now that is a discipline.
Yeah.
And that's where people, they get lazy, they're tired, they're this, they're that, they don't want to do it. They just want to let the plant do it at the end of the day or whatever. When maybe you should alternate with going into a meditative state to get and go, what was that plant vibration? Oh yeah, let me replicate it. Because, you know, the plants told me how to be psychic. When I went to psychic class during this period when I was working with cannabis, I wasn't initially all that psychic. The only way I would know that I had tuned into the psychic realm was like, oh yeah, this feels kind of like the cannabis vibration. The plant taught me how to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I could kind of do it at will without the plant. So this is what we're teaching each other. Yes, everyone wants to be in ease, peace, ecstasy, connection with divine information, but we've got to be careful because right now there are too many addiction memes that are interfering with our space.
Yeah.
And we're meant to learn how to get that vibration of the cannabinoids going, whether we are smoking, eating, vaping, or not.
That's a good point. You can smoke it, you can eat it, which is really, those are powerful. And then I guess you can use drops too. There's THC drops that you can use, tinctures. I haven't done the tinctures yet. I've done the edible, they're strong. I want to let people know, and if you haven't figured it out yet, there's so many uses for this great plant medicine, cannabis. As a beginner, discovering the intelligence of cannabis, experiencing as a gentle ally to take you to a higher level. Because when you're altered, you're looking at everything differently. TV looks different. Your interactions, your language looks different. You hear things that are unusual. If you can get out in nature, like your backyard, it's huge.
Yeah, because the colors look different and you might start having a perception of the subtle beings just on the other side of the veil, right?
Yeah.
You might start having animal communications.
Yeah. You can kickstart a lot of stuff. It's great for creative inspiration. I've used it for different chapters in books, articles. Remember, give yourself the ability to respond to it by recording. Marguerite mentioned recording it. I think it's a great idea because in the beginning, you may want to know what's going on and the experience might be so overwhelming that you can't remember what happened. But if you record a few items, it'll come back to you.
That's right. And those are precious jewels of wisdom for you.
Exactly.
They're precious teachings. You want to remember them. And it really does help to record or write in some manner because you think, oh, I'll never forget this. But it can go out the window.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. The other thing that we haven't really talked about is healing. And I find that using cannabis when you've had a really hard week and you're feeling kind of down, it can help with that. We don't want to use it if you have clinical depression or you have any kind of issues with personality problems and you're taking medicines for that. It's not a good product for that. It's not a good plant helper. But it's wonderful for sexual awakening, both men and women. You can have some of the most powerful orgasms. That's what my whole book's about, which our ancestors not only cultivated, but developed a whole system around orgasm, which is the tantric yogic traditions, and we've talked about that in the past. But what else, Marguerite? What else can we use cannabis for that is helpful and beneficial?
Well, I'll have what you're having because when I use cannabis, I am in my head. It is hard for me to be sexual with cannabis. Okay. And I know I'm not alone with that. So lucky you. What a great karma that you have. Well,
I had the intention. I mean, the intention is a whole chapter in my book.
All right. I think, maybe I'll I'll experiment with that. Like, okay, Lady Cannabis, please show me what it is to get in my lower chakras and have that with you. Cause I'm always like, blah, 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 the oracle. And
you should turn off the vocal cords and work more towards the lower chakras.
Exactly. So I think I'm going to do that. I think that it is a journey. It's an intention. So let's look more into it. People who even had, dare I say, sexual trauma. What might cannabis be able to help with? Right. Okay. Right. Releasing. You can also, I was shown, work with Lady Cannabis to release your addiction of Lady Cannabis.
Interesting. Somebody who's using it like perhaps a little too much.
Yeah. And then work with her to show you what are the entities connected with this? How do you release them? And how do you get into right relationship with this plant so that they don't have entry anymore? What's your dosage? What's your frequency? What's your intention? Right.
Yeah.
And then there are also levels and layers, the one major thing that came to me during that first oracle ceremony back into cannabis after 2 years was and this came through another friend of mine who had been quite experienced, Amba Aliana who had received that one thing that is important for you to do with cannabis is to put it in either a small crystal bowl or a brass bowl, and 3 times use the sounding of the bowl with the intention that you are clearing the plant all the way down to the DNA of anything that is not authentic to it, that does not serve it, that is parasitic. And that includes all of the different additions of strains and people and growers and all the many things, so that you get down to the essence of the plant and you work with her that way every single time. And then you are less likely to get into trouble, get into addiction.
I like that.
So that is key for me. So now every single time, and that's what I'm teaching, is part of the ritual. You have to clear the cannabis.
I like that.
Let's face it, it's all tainted in some way or another. And if you don't want to fall into the taint problems, then you want to intentionally clear it and really connect with that spirit of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Right up front, the authentic original.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. As we come to the end of this discussion, I want to get your sense, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes here on some of the advanced uses of cannabis. And I have an acquaintance who lives in England, and she's been using cannabis for probably a good decade or more, and it's not legal in England. So she grows her own plants, and she uses organic soil, and she uses organic water, special waters that have been treated. And she gets, and I haven't tried any, but she creates really, grows really strong and really powerful cannabis strains.
Right.
And she's been working with the fairy realm.
Yes.
And this is something that is not necessarily happening now, but this is kind of in the future as more and more countries become legal. And this is a tool for working with the other realms.
Absolutely.
And I want to hear from you on this. The shifting allows you to see these other realms. She's working with the fairy realm. Now, she's only got to the beginning where they allow her to see them, but she's also watching them interact with the plant and the animal life, which is really, this is going to be the next shift in our reality, is these abilities to see these altered states and these other beings that live with us, the gnomes, the fairies, the elves, and so forth and so on. When she first wrote to me, I was like, "Oh, you're out of your gourd." But
Well,
go ahead.
yes, I could not agree with you more, Cliff. And as a matter of fact, my YouTube live that I'm doing Friday, April 28th, on the Marguerite Rigoglioso YouTube channel at 11:30 a.m. Eastern is going to be all about working with Lady Cannabis to access information about the Fae, Fairy, and Leprechaun realms.
Oh my God, wonderful.
That is, come, be present, ask questions on the chat function. Because let's consider Cannabis herself is a deva.
Yes.
Is a plant spirit, fairy being who is also holographically connected to source creator, as we all are, as all fairies are, and so forth. But if you want to learn about the fairy and fae realm, imbibe a plant who is, earth created and astrally created to give you the pathway into this knowledge. So I'm so curious to see what's going to come up in this Oracle session, because when I did the first one was about accessing Lady Cannabis herself. So she had all these things to teach us about her, some of which I've shared here. Mm-hmm. The second was about Mary Magdalene. So Cannabis was giving me all information about Mary Magdalene. Now we're going to go in leprechauns, fairies, and more. What is Lady Cannabis, Queen Plant Spirit herself, telling us about this? Because yes, our ability to see, connect with, communicate with, and respect and work with harmoniously, once again, these subtle earth allies is critical to the survival of the human species and the survival of the Gaia sphere. Okay, so that we don't nuclear bomb and destroy ourselves through deforestation and pollution and whatever. Okay, that's a big way. You asked, how could cannabis be used? To create these openings with these spirit allies so that we can rectify Mother Earth again. Yeah. We can heal her. We can, grow her back, right? Stop.
That's a good point. I wonder if by beginning to imbibe and use these plant medicines, we kind of reconnect with Gaia.
Absolutely.
Because our consciousness is shifted, and so we're like one body that's healed. And then each person who begins using plant medicines is healed as well. And that becomes more harmonious. And then we're kind of linked to Gaia.
Right. These plants are the goddesses of that process.
Good point.
And Lady Cannabis, people asked her, well, what is her real name? And what came through in that oracle was the name of God, which is unpronounceable. It's every syllable and it's every letter, because she is a holographic representation of the divine, just like any of these other vines and medicines and fungi. And, so it was like, but she has a feminine valence, you see, and it's that feminine energy, that feminine valence, not only of the priestesses using it, administering it, but the recognition of the plant itself that is part of our healing. Like, oh, there's a feminine valence, there's a masculine valence. We need to incorporate more of this feminine valence and work with it on the planet and play with it in order to heal all of the negativity that's been going on here that is threatening the very human species itself.
Exactly. It's funny because I know north of me here in Oregon, they have these centers that you can go to and have a DMT or a cannabis or a hashish experience with a group. And I think that's wonderful. It's almost like the ancients would go to a temple for a healing, and they would be given a sacred plant or a psychedelic that would release the stress and the problem and the hurt, allow the healing to come through. So
it's the Eleusinian mysteries. It's the basis of all the ancient mystery traditions was a sacred group plant experience.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Hey, as we depart, I just want to remind those of you who are listening that you're welcome to email me if you have any questions. My email is earthancientsforyou@gmail.com. And go to themaleorgasm.com. You can see 3 or 4 chapters of Cannabis and Sexual Ecstasy for Men. I have a number of articles on there. And also, I've listed the top 20 strains for sexual awakening, sexual healing, and also creative endeavors. And when I say creative endeavors, that can be music, writing, painting, just being a creative person. So check those out. And Marguerite, tell us a little bit about your website and what you're up to in the next few months.
Oh, fantastic. I hope you'll add into their strains for the oracle work too, if you know, because that would be great.
That's your website. I want to hear your website.
All right, that's my website. All right. So my website is sevensistersmysteryschool.com. The 7 is written out. And if people keep up with that, on May 7th, we are going to be announcing the enrollment into our Sacred Feminine Plant Medicine Academy, in which we are going to have modules and ceremonies online for Blue Lotus, Mama Cacao, and Lady Cannabis. So this would be a wonderful way to either introduce yourself or deepen your relationships with these plants from a sacred feminine priestess perspective as to what that would mean in your life and what that would mean for your work in the world. So, just keep visiting that, or get on our, go there now, get on our Sacred Sunday e-news, and you'll be informed of when that enrollment begins. And on the heels of that, I'm going to be rolling out my Sacred Cannabis Priestess mentoring, where I will be working one-on-one with people and possibly in small groups to have women use this as an adjunct or a springboard into their oracle work, to receive that divine information for themselves.
Cool. Sounds great. I want to remind you, those of you who live in states that are not legal, remember, and we've talked about this many times, a cannabis tourism, which is where you pick a weekend, you either drive or you fly to a state that has legal cannabis, find a very inexpensive motel, hotel, you go to the local dispensary, you choose the appropriate strain, you set up a nice environment, candles if you want that, quiet lighting, not to be, no interruptions whatsoever. So this is something you do by yourself or with a lover or your mate. As long as they know that this is something that is important for you and they can participate, great. If not, this is something you need to do by yourself. You go, you experience the cannabis, and then as it becomes available in your state, then you're more comfortable with it. Don't feel left out, especially in the United States. You can go to nearby cities. You can drive
over the border.
Pardon me?
Yeah, just go over the border to wherever you go.
And I don't want it to sound like, suspicious, negative, because look, those states that are not legal, they're just about to become legal. Yeah. They're almost there.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It may be
federally, it will change as well.
Yeah, and when the feds lock it in, it's going to be, wonderful. But there are still states that are illegal, and that's a problem. So consider cannabis
and what
tourism.
We want to do is train the people who can be those mentors for all the millions who will be awakening, to help them do it with integrity and in a way that truly serves them and our planet, and does not get them into trouble, addictions, and misuse.
Exactly. And that's a great comment, which is like, if you know more about it and you've had it, then you're less likely to abuse it, which is really, it's easy to do. It's like anything else it's just something that can get overused. So, hey, Marguerite, great to see you. Wonderful. And it was a blessing to have you with me on the program. So we'll have you again.
All right. Very good.
I think as a portion of people in the United States that have a distinct disadvantage of not being able to have access to cannabis products, I think, the CBD products are available pretty much, I would think, countrywide. But anything with THC or anything that's labeled psychoactive is a problem for states that just have not enacted the laws or allowed it to be available to their citizens. And I think it's kind of a disservice, but everybody's on a different plane. Everyone has different priorities. And obviously the states that do not have cannabis as a legal substance are missing out. The amount of revenue generated by cannabis sales, I believe so far, is 30 billion US dollars. And we're not even, into the full year yet. But can you imagine if every state was legal? The revenues would be amazing. And the money that each state gets is amazing. I mean, California's $1 billion a year in revenue. Colorado's, if not $1 billion, more than close to $1 billion. The revenue potential is great. And I did mention the research, the really important research on cannabinoids and the other compounds within cannabis that the ancestors knew about. I think it goes much further than the noted ancestors. The Chinese used cannabis in all kinds of ways that we're just beginning to understand. And the ability to support and heal nervous system, organs, and other vital physiology, people that have problems physically, is amazing. So the sooner we can legalize it federally, the better. It's just going to make it a lot easier, not only for recreation, but for medical. If you go and do a search for cannabis healing, you'll see a long list of its benefits. It's an amazing plant medicine, and it's truly a plant medicine on many, many levels. When we have Marguerite on the program, she's basically voicing a lot that I present in this book, Cannabis and Sexual Ecstasy, because we're just beginning to touch on the levels of consciousness that are achieved when you're altered. And that's why it's really important, if you have your phone with you, your iPhone or your Android, you load one of these free programs, these recording programs, and you can ask questions. And what you sometimes come back with, and this is you talking, but you're altered, you answer your own questions. And you'll be surprised some of the things that you come up with. You're your own best therapist. You really are. And your own best guide and counsel. So don't take it lightly. I mean, this has been used for centuries, if not longer, to access higher realms, your own higher realms, tap into your guidance, and really go to work on problem solving. In some cases, it can be prophecy. It's wonderful. It really is. It's a fantastic plant ally. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hey, as you know, we do a couple of tours every year, and we got a major one coming up in November. It's our Maya of Tabasco and Chiapas, Mexico. It's November 10th to the 17th. We all meet in Villahermosa, which is a few hundred miles from Mexico City. And then we spend the night there. We head over to La Venta, which is one of the major Olmec cities, and we're going to visit an outdoor museum with huge megaliths. Then we're going to go and see La Venta itself, what's left of it, because it's a very, very old city. And that's going to be a blast. And then we're taking a bus for a few hour drive to Chiapas, and we're going to see the golden jewel of the Maya classic period, which is Palenque. We'll be there for a couple of days. And guess who's our host? It's Dr. Edwin Barnhard, who actually surveyed and did excavations at Palenque. He will be our guide for the whole tour, and it is a blast. Well, November 10th through the 17th for the entire itinerary. And I just mentioned a few items. We're going to be seeing we'll be visiting a lot of other locations as well. Those are the highlights. For more information, go to earthancients.com/tours. Tours. Check it out. See what you think. Get your deposit in because we're about halfway full, and we're taking a maximum of 30 people. We don't want to take more in there because we want to be able to get around and drive and see these places. Get your deposit in. If you have any questions whatsoever, send me an email. Send it to earthancients4u, the number 4, the letter U, at gmail.com. Go, hey, Cliff, talk to me about this tour. What's going on here? Some people haven't been out of the country, and they're a little concerned about Mexico. Mexico is completely safe. It is a beautiful place to be. People are wonderful. And when we go to these ruins, they love foreigners because we help their economy. So there you go. earthancients.com/tours. Come out and join us. November 10th through the 17th. It's going to be a blast. All right, that's it for this program. I want to thank my guest today, Marguerite Rigogoloso, coming to us from Massachusetts. As always, the team of Ruth Thomas, Mark Foster, and everyone who makes this thing happen. Thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. I appreciate it, really. And we will talk to you next time.